not about the money, it's the principle. Gotta watch who you revere, who you listen to. I speak the Eastern soul, my flow medicinal. And I buried the old man, now I'm invincible. Gotta be wise in judgment, it's critical. Either couple with this brotherhood or you'll get ridiculed. The greatest man, the greatest servant, I kill for who I minister to. And I'm going war, nigga, win or lose. Hey, I was forged from the fire, torn from the liar. If hand join in hand, you'll get caught up in the crossfire. Become a casualty of chance. I'm in my stance, still in hand, ready to swing it like a lance. If the enemy advance, I'ma enhance. Had the benefit of the doubt, he never had a chance. Hey, this the shit that they beg for, that burned down the wicked Judge Dredd flow. Bitch, I am the law. Dog faced it, prepared for war.
I'm gon' war till the day I'm done. Number one till the day I'm done. I'ma grind till the day is done. I'ma war till the day I'm done. They can't stop me. Nothing new up under the sun. I'm gon' war till the day I'm done. Number one till the day I'm done. I'ma grind till the day is done. I'ma war till the day I'm done. They can't stop me. Nothing new up under the sun.
I see what they say. Never envy a carnal man. Claim they real, they actions don't match what they saying. I got the upper hand, what you don't understand, youngin'. I'd rather bleed than concede, now they're saying something. These niggas cunning, they want my power, they never take it from me. Hey, for that money, I heard you assisted. They can't go out like that, they'll have to 86 me.
I.S.U.P.K. 53rd Annual Lord's Passover.
Hey, Shalom, Israel. This is the I.S.U.P.K. down in Florida. I'm Captain of 10,000 Shamoy Yalo. We here to let you know. 53rd Annual Lord's Passover is going to be held down here in Florida. It's going down in South Florida, Cocoa Beach.
Friday, April 15th, 2022.
The lamb, the wine, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, you understand? Good music, good weather, the palm trees, the whole nine.
This is going to be glorious. Book your hotels now at the Holiday Inn Express and Suites, 301 Tucker Lane, Cocoa Beach, Florida, 32926.
April 15th and the 16th. Don't just book for the 15th. Book for the 15th and the 16th.
It's going down Friday, April 15th at the Space Coast Convention Center.
Moses told Pharaoh we need 3 days to be able to go out into the wilderness and serve our power the way he commands. You're going to have to get that off with your boss, with your slave master. So make sure you in the building. Cocoa Beach, Florida, April 15th to 16th, 2022. It's going down. We'll see y'all there. Shalom.
Power, 144,000. I'm just trying to make 144,000. 144,000. I'm just trying to make 144,000.
Clap it up. Big up to the brothers out in Florida putting together the Passover. Make sure to get ready for the Passover coming up pretty soon. We got an I.S.U.P.K. under Commanding General Yohana. Started out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York in 1969. We teach the truth that the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians are the real Israelites that the Bible is talking about. Today, we're going to further prove this fact with supporting evidence that shows the indigenous people of North, Central, and South America are part of these lost 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. Israel is a nation that is to operate as one complete family. And in order to do so, it is imperative that we dispel the lies that have been taught to us about our history as a people. From the Native American culture to the Mexican culture, from our rights, customs, and way of life during the ancient civilizations of the Americas, we have been shown only the very surface of where our history goes. Before we were forced to speak English and Spanish, before we were converted to Catholicism and Christianity, Before we were even known as Aztecs and Mayans, Incas, Sioux Indians, Cherokees, Kickapoo, etc. We were a nation of one people, and the evidence of this is shown throughout records dating to before any of us were even born. This culture of awakening has been branded as a Black Hebrew Israelite movement, a predominantly Black movement that is only solidified when our native tribes are not taking part in this awakening. When we are not joining our family in this spiritual war that has caused us to separate and stay divided, well, guess what? Those days are over. They are done forever. The I.S.U.P.K has been teaching since 1969 about the truth of all 12 tribes. And it is simply prophecy that we all return as one, and that Blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians rise again to their righteous, true heritage. So expect to see more Hispanic and Native Americans waking up to this truth like myself. We have broken ground in San Antonio, Mexico, Rio Grande Valley, and many other parts of Texas where a lot of the northern tribes dwell. It is time to really see our family grow because the time is at hand. You understand? And to begin, what we'll do is we're going to go into some preset. Matter of fact, first preset we're going to get is 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 17. All right? This is another thing that we got to understand is that we are operating as one family. We got to dispel the image that is put across saying that this is some Black Hebrew Israelite movement. They say that, and of course, when we say it, we already know what that means. It means all 12 tribes of Israel, because we all look at Hispanics and Native Americans as Black people. But the world does not understand that because the world's caught up in racial tension and everything that comes with that ignorance of not understanding the full situation when dealing with the race problems in America today. Again, we're going to get 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 17 to kick things off, just to kind of set the tone for what this class is really about. Because at the end of the day, this class is about us being as one, being with each other, standing up for each other to make sure that none of us are left behind and that none of us get lost in the sauce to the ways of this world. You understand? So let's get that first. Go ahead and read when you got that, other one.
The book of 1 Peter, chapter 2, verse 17.
Go ahead.
Honor all men.
Go ahead.
Love the brotherhood.
Love the what?
Love the brotherhood.
Love the brotherhood. Read on.
Fear God.
Fear God. Read on.
Honor the king.
Honor the king. Who's our king? Yahushua, Mashiach, whom the Christians call Jesus Christ. All right, and that's the thing that we gotta understand is that if we are to love the Most High and to love Christ, we ought to love each other. But we got to know who our brothers are in order for us to actually get things set up the way it's supposed to make this sure that this kingdom is put on earth. Wine's fine. Water's good. Slocky. You understand? And that's what it really comes down to, is that are we standing up for these people? When you look at the way that Native Americans came to the protest after George Floyd had gotten taken out by a cop, you see that's a sign of brotherhood right there. That's a sign of them saying, you know what, we see your struggle and we can relate to that struggle because we've gone through the same thing. And so even without them understanding that they're family with us, that they're family from one another, from the so-called Black man to the Native American man, that their struggle in the same issues that they face with racial tension and segregation and persecution and all manner of oppression, they still find ways to look at one another and try to seek each other out to put our family back together without even really realizing it. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to put the pieces together and show you just how it all falls into place, and we're going to prove it in history. We're going to show you in history the evidence that shows that our people had been striving to keep similar understandings and similar customs to what lines right up with the ancient Israelites, even though we're all the way over here on this side of the planet and Israel is over in the Middle East on the other side of the planet. Okay? But before we get that, let's get the book of Job, chapter 8 and verse 8. The scripture says that whatever is written before time was written for our learning, right? So the things that happened in the past are important for us to understand and learn from. If we ain't focusing on the past, how are we supposed to set ourselves up for the future if we don't understand where we come from, if we don't understand exactly the extent of what our nation is and who consists of that nation? We don't think about these things because we'd rather be out there on social media taking pictures to try to look good on our day-to-day lives, like as if any of that really matters, right? All that really does is leads to all manner of depression and people trying to one up each other, and that's not brotherhood right there. That's not what we want to see. But we seeing that running rampant. We seeing people running rampant with things that are petty and that don't really pertain to us building a nation, and it's all a distraction. So let's get away from that distraction. Make sure you get out a pen and paper. Make sure you're taking down notes, because what we're about to go over today is some heavy material. This is some real heavy facts that we're going to be bringing out that are going to really hit home and show us just how we come from the same nation as our brothers that have been putting in work since 1969. That have caused our enemy to display and name us as a black Israelite movement, as an all-black movement, black supremacist movement. They try to put all these titles on us, from Southern Poverty Law Center to so-called scholars that try to come against the I.S.U.P.K. They all get shut down in the end. But one thing that we're going to do is, since we're in the classroom setting, we're going to be able to go into further detail and describe in perfect understanding of what it is that our people have done in the past that show that the history and the proof is out there. You understand? Go ahead and read that. We're in the book of Job, chapter 8 and verse 8.
The book of Job, chapter 8, verse 8.
Go ahead.
For inquire, I pray thee, of former age, and prepare thyself to the search of their fathers.
Inquire, I pray thee. He say like, come on, man, you need to do this. You need to make sure that you do this. I pray that you do this. And guess what? He's talking to you right now. You understand? He's saying, I pray that you inquire of the former age, that you inquire of the past, that you look in the history books, that you look at what it was that your people come from in the search of your fathers. And that's a very important theme when it comes to Israelites, because searching for our forefathers is one of the most vital pieces of what dictates where we come from. You understand? From our bloodline lineage. You see bloodline lineage being a very important theme all throughout the scriptures, from Christ, the prophets, the Israelites, the tribes. This all part of what we are as a nation. So we pray that you go ahead and search out your forefathers. Job chapter 8, verse 8 outlines that perfectly, right? And in doing so, looking towards our customs, looking for what we've done in the past. How do we operate in the past? And does this line up with the scriptures? Because the more that we begin to look in search of our forefathers, the more we begin to understand exactly where we come from. And the proof is there. But we need to pick up the book and read. We need to start studying. A lot of us have gotten lazy because all we like to do is binge watch TV shows all the time, or play video games all the time, or chase tail in the club all day, when really we've been distracted from the fact that we need to be studying. So I pray that you inquire of the former age in search of your forefathers, Israel. So let's begin. We're going to start with, just real quick, grace over a little bit of information here just to kind of show you Deuteronomy chapter 27 and verse 1. That's what we're going to get. Deuteronomy chapter 27 and verse 1, to lay the groundwork of what it is to be an Israelite and what our charge and what our responsibility of Israelites is to become as we start to grow in this truth. Go ahead.
The book of Deuteronomy chapter 27, verse 1.
Read.
And Moses with the elders of Israel commanded the people.
Commanded the people. Go ahead.
Saying, keep all the commandments which I command you this day.
And if you're an Israelite, you ought to be keeping the commandments that were given to us, right? Not eating pork, dressing a certain type of way, following the culture. We just showed you at the beginning of the class an advertisement to the Passover. We're extending an invitation for Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans to follow the order that was given in that precept that we just read right there, okay? And there are consequences if we don't follow these things. And to be honest, a lot of us is falling to these consequences without even knowing, because we were not taught these things. But that's okay, because again, this is why we're here. We're here to wake our people up and to make sure that our people come back together. All right. We can skip to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 1. We'll read that real quick. Again, we're talking about in the book of Moses, the book of Deuteronomy, where Moses was given the order to command Israel to keep the commandments. And there ends up being about 600 plus commandments. So we got a lot of studying to do so that we can get things right one at a time, if need be, to make sure that we clean our people up. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 1. Go ahead.
The book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it shall come to pass that if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments, which I command thee this day.
Read on.
That the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations.
Above who?
Above all nations.
Above all nations. Read on.
Of the earth.
Of the earth. The entire earth. Do you understand how important it is to know that the Most High is choosing you to be above all nations of the entire earth? Now, if you were not an Israelite, you would want to make sure that those people do not keep those commandments. So what we understand now is that we are actually at war here, a war of information, a war of culture. They try to prevent us from awakening to the truth. They're trying to prevent the northern tribes from coming back and being a part of the whole 12 tribes of Israel. That's why they use divisive terms like Black Hebrew Israelite Movement, Black KKK. They try to put all these titles on us because they know that it scares off people and makes them think that this has nothing to do with them, to leave it alone. But guess what? The Most High says right here that if we are to keep his laws, he's going to put us on high above all nations upon the face of the earth. But that's not what happened now, is it? Because we're not up above all the other nations on the face of the earth. There were two paths to choose. And Deuteronomy chapter 28 explains in great detail those two paths. For the first 15 verses of this chapter, it goes over the blessings that the Israelites were to receive for keeping the law, statutes, and commandments. Skip down to verse 15. We'll read verse 15 real quick.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 15.
Read.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God.
Go ahead.
To observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes.
So he's saying, if thou wilt not hearken, this is verse 15 here. All right, read on.
To observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
And man, listen, first 14 verses of this chapter, blessings. The rest of them, curses. And I can assure you, we can go over each one by one and show you these curses. And this is exactly how life is played out for you and me and our families and our forefathers before us. Because guess what? There was a path that we chose that was not right. And it shows throughout history. But that doesn't mean that all hope is lost. It just means that there is work that needs to get done for us to be the people that are above all nations on the face of this earth. So there's a lot of work to do. But today, what we're going to focus on is showing you the proof of who we are. Now, me personally, from the tribe of Zabalawan, which is known in ancient history as the Mayans, right? You have other tribes throughout North, Central, and South America. We're going to get into these today. Go ahead and skip down to verse 64. This is one of the curses that has happened to our people because we failed to keep the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments as a nation, as an entire group. Read that.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 64. The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 64.
Go ahead.
And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people.
Read that again.
And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people.
Read on.
From one end of the earth, even unto the other.
Where were we when this was originally stated? This is on the other side of the earth. This was over in the Middle East. It was North Africa. What was it when we was coming out of Egypt, right? And the Most High said that if we didn't keep the Most High's laws, we were going to be scattered across the earth, across the whole face of the earth. Well, guess what? Guess where you're at right now, black man, Hispanic man? You're on the other side of the earth. We have been scattered amongst all people all throughout history. We have been put amongst other nations. That is true. But another thing that we got to take into consideration is when we're talking about the origins, when we're talking about where we come from with our lineage, it comes from a source. It comes from a place. And right now, what we're going to do is we are going to continue to build that understanding that the North Americans, the so-called Hispanics, that we are the Israelites as well as the blacks and the so-called black man that you see here in America. And so that we could dispel the lie that this is just a black Hebrew Israelite movement. No longer is it going to be us having a lack of brotherhood and not coming together with our people. Now we're going to come up and become a nation of one. And this time we waking up for sure this time. You know what I'm saying? We going to show you the proof that we had been trying to keep the laws on this side of the globe. You understand? Before we do that, though, there is another scripture that we need. It's going to be from the Apocrypha. Again, the 1611 King James Bible did include the Apocrypha. So make sure that you have an Apocrypha, a King James version of the Apocrypha. We're going to need to hit up 2nd Ezra chapter 13 and verse 40. Okay, I know we're going through more than a few precepts right now, but we're just laying the groundwork for our class today. You understand? We're going to go to 2nd Ezra chapter 13 and verse 40 so we can get a foundation of where we at now. All right, because again, in Deuteronomy it said that we were going to be scattered amongst all nations all across the globe. Right now, read that again. 2nd Ezra chapter 13 verse 40. Go ahead.
The book of 2nd Ezra chapter 13 verse 40.
Read.
Those are the 10 tribes.
Those are the what?
Those are the 10 tribes.
Read on.
Which were carried away prisoner out of their own land.
In
the time of Hosea.
Go ahead.
The king.
This is pertaining to what happened in the book of 2 Kings chapter 17. Israel was split into two. After King Solomon, you had his sons Jeroboam and Rehoboam who reigned in Israel. And they started to slip away from the culture. They started to fray away from keeping the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments. It kind of fell apart even considering after King David himself. That Jeroboam and Rehoboam reigned, and then later on Israel got into a split. Okay, and Hosea, king of Israel at the time, was around the time frame that this occurred. All right, so that's one thing that you got to keep in mind, because that's what this is referring to. Started from the top. Now we can read it with some clarity. And again, make sure you're taking these notes down because it's going to get more in depth. All right.
The book of 2nd Ezra chapter 13 verse 40.
Go ahead.
Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoner out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king.
Read on.
Whom Salmanassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so he came into another land. Right, and this is how Israel ended up in captivity in Assyria. Okay, big up to the brothers in the chat. Yahabah Shemeshai Barakatah. To the brother Ephraim out there in Acuña, Mexico. To the brother young man Jason checking in from Odessa, Texas. Good to see you. Trooper Hawad Bound Yashikar checking in from Laredo. All right. Appreciate y'all guys tuning in. Again, make sure you're taking the notes down, because man, we going straight in today. We talking about red pill today. All right. Salakia. If any of you had any doubt in your mind that you are an Israelite, if you're a Hispanic man that had doubt that you're an Israelite, if you're a Native American that has doubt that you're an Israelite, by the end of this class, you're going to be professing, you're going to be saying to everybody that you're an Israelite because of what we're going to be bringing out, all right? Right now, we in the book of the Apocrypha that was taken out by the Roman Catholic Church in the late 1800s because they didn't want you to learn this. Remember, we were beaten and bruised to follow Catholicism and Christianity, and they used a censored version of the scriptures to lie to us about who we are. Because when we go into this part of the Bible, it's going to really piece things together that we need to understand the full origins of where we come from. All right. And it says, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. Go ahead. What happened in verse 41? Verse 41. But they took this counsel among themselves.
Who did? The Israelites. Go ahead.
That they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt.
Where never mankind dwelt. We made a plan to escape. All right. A lot of people like to watch movies about breaking out of prison, breaking out of captivity. You know what I'm saying? Those kind of movies are always real tense. Well, imagine a nation of people making the biggest, like a real big escape to the point where they're going to try to go somewhere where nobody else on the planet is at. All right. To go to a place where mankind has not dwelt. Okay. That's the plan here. That's what we're talking about. And again, around 720 BC is the approximate time frame that Israel was brought into Assyrian captivity. And this plan is taking place here was a plan that took approximately 20 years to actually occur, because it was around 700 BC that the Native Americans and Slovakia, that these 10 tribes that it's talking about in 2nd Esdras made their move. Verse 42, read on.
Verse 42, that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land.
Read that again.
That they may keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land.
So the plan here was for these 10 tribes to find a place on the world where nobody was dwelling at, so that they can attempt to keep God's laws. That was their intent. Now we're gonna have to see if they followed through with that intent and how well they followed through with that intent. All right. Go ahead and skip to verse 45 real quick.
Verse 45.
Go ahead.
For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half.
A year and a half. It took a year and a half for them to make it over to this side of the globe. Now that's a very long trip. Some people go on a cruise and 7 days is too much. Imagine taking a trip that took a year and a half. You better get good at fishing. You better know how to put everything together. You got to make a really good boat for that too. And guess what? These people knew how to build stuff very well, right? Read on. You can read. Start verse 45 again from the top. I don't want.
For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half.
Okay, go ahead.
And the same region is called Arsareth.
This place is called Arsareth. If you look up the definition for Arsareth, it means newfound land. That's what Arsareth means. All right, that's what that means. Now read on. Verse 46.
Verse 46. Then dwelt they there until.
No, you good.
Then dwelt they there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come.
Ooh, that's heavy right there. It says they dwelt there until the latter times, until the end times. But long time from now, they still gonna be there. Guess what? And this is what we're gonna talk about today. Where they went to dwell at, they still there. And even at the time where this was being written, I believe the 2nd Esdras was being written in 1st century after Christ. Wait, hold up. Yeah. 1st century AD, approximately in the late 1st century. Okay. That's when 2nd Esdras was written. And even at that time, guess what? Israel had already made their move to Arsareth. Again, that happened around 700 BC. And you start to see civilizations on different parts of the globe that are very prominent around 700, 600 BC. That's something to keep in mind as well, because this is something that we see in history in a certain part of the globe, and we're going to get into that today. All right. So again, we just read that they there to the latter times, and also now when this was being written, they were already there. That's why it's bringing into fruition those records, talking about that. And on a side note, another thing that's important to understand is that the Assyrians planted themselves in the nation of Israel where we were at before they took us to Assyria. That's another important thing to keep in mind. Now, very quickly, we're going to read from this book right here, which is called View of the American Indians, showing them to be descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel. Why does it say 10 tribes? Because it says 10 tribes right here in 2nd Esdras, what we were just talking about. When Israel got split, Israel was split, and Judah, Benjamin, and half of Levi stayed with the Israelites in Judah. And then the other 9.5 or 10 tribes went to what was called Northern Kingdom or Israel before the split, before they got taken into captivity. In this book here, we're just going to read a quick preface. right there highlighted. What does this say? This is in the preface. This isn't even before the book begins. Read that highlighted part right there, sir.
A view of the American Indians.
Mm-hmm.
It says the three them.
Yeah. It says the three great classes.
Mm-hmm. The three great classes of the Aboriginal Americans.
Mm-hmm.
First, the best known among them bore these great and substantial marks of a Hebrew.
And go ahead.
And an Assyrian origin.
Oh, wait a minute. Read that again.
The three great classes of Aboriginal Americans.
This is talking about the so-called Mexicans or Aztec Empire, the North American, and then even in Canada, the Native Americans in that region. And then in South America, where you had the Incas and you had the Mayans and you had some of the other indigenous cultures that were spread throughout those parts of the globe. Those are the general three great classes of the Aboriginal Americans, first and best known among them. It says they bore the substantial marks of what?
Bore these great and substantial marks of a Hebrew and an Assyrian origin.
So these people had the marks of a Hebrew. That's important. That's the most important thing. And Assyrian origin. Why Assyrian origin? Because it lines right up with what we just read in the scriptures. You understand? Where it's talking about these Israelites that were put in Assyria and then escaped Assyria to go to a land where no man had dwelt, called Arsareth. Well, guess what? We're reading from a book here that's going into some further details about these people that moved over to this side of the globe. And it's not a coincidence. This is big facts here. This book, View of the American Indians, was written in the early 1800s. This book was written before any of us were even born, before our grandparents were even born. You understand? Like that's we're reading old books. We could pull out old books and show you what was said hundreds of years ago. You understand what I'm saying? That's the crazy thing about this truth, is that the proof has always been there, but it has been hidden from us. We have been lied to about our history. So we're going to go into the old books and show you that it's saying the same thing the Bible says. It's saying the same thing that the I.S.U.P.K has been saying. And this is even before we even pulled these books out. You understand? So it's important that we come together as a nation and understand that this is where we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to be Christians. We're not supposed to be Muslims and people on the block selling dope. You know what I'm saying? Our life shouldn't be limited to just putting a ball in a basket and jumping high and running fast and getting concussions, but by mashing our heads together on a football field. Our lives are more than that. And even though this kingdom looks at us in high regard because of our strength and our abilities, imagine just how much more the world would look at us in respect if we come back to the Most High's culture that he gave us from the beginning. To heck with the culture that they're trying to give us. Let's come back to our true heritage and find a real strength. All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go real quick into the book of, we're going to do this. 2 Chronicles chapter 20 and verse 1. Israel is a very righteous nation, a very clean and pure nation. We take steps to make sure that we take care of one another. First of all, we take precautionary measures to make sure that everybody's safe. Okay. And also we show the Most High that we're willing to sacrifice things to make sure that we find victory in our day-to-day struggles. Well, not only is that something that is written in the records of the scriptures, we're also going to find out that this is exactly how we operate. We can hold this for a second.
Oh, we can do that book?
Yeah, we're going to go back to it here in a minute.
Right.
But we're going to go to 2 Chronicles chapter 20 and verse 1 to get a little bit of background information on what we're going to continue to find out in this book that we just read. Again, this is the view of the Native American Indians. And as a bonus, what I'm going to do, just give me a second. I'm going to put the ISBN number of this book in the chat. All right. So give me 1 second to do that real quick while we get that scripture ready. All right. We're going to go ahead and read from verse 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 1 through 5.
The book of 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 1.
Go ahead.
It came to pass after this also that the children of Moab and the children of Ammon, and with them other besides the Ammonites, came against Jehoshaphat to battle.
So what's going on right here is that the Ammonites and the Moabites are getting ready to come against Israel in warfare, in battle. Go ahead.
Verse 2. Then there came some that told Jehoshaphat, saying, there cometh a great multitude against thee from beyond the sea on this side Syria. And behold, they be in Hazazontamar, which is in Jedi.
We don't. Now you good. Those are the names of the places, right? Go ahead. They're just naming places.
Right.
They're naming specific locations. Go ahead.
And Jehoshaphat feared and set himself to seek the Lord.
Okay, so he said Jehoshaphat was preparing to seek the Lord. Okay, and in times of war, there is something that the responsibility of the leaders of Israel would do. Go ahead. What verse you on right now?
Verse 3.
Okay, go ahead.
And Jehoshaphat feared and set himself to seek the Lord, and proclaimed a fast throughout all Judah.
He said what?
And proclaimed a fast throughout all Judah.
So this man Jehoshaphat was in charge of Judah, and he proclaimed a fast for all of Judah. Okay, that's an important thing to keep in mind. In times of war, Israel would fast. Okay, that's something that is a custom that you see in the Old Testament. And guess what? We're going to look to see if that's something that the Native Americans did as well. So we're going to go back to this book here, and we're going to start at we're going to go to page 37 here. I know we're jumping around a little bit, but this is about to get real crazy here in a second. So we're going to start off right here. And we're going to go bleeding over into the next page a little bit. Right there where it starts off and it says, much might be said.
All right. Much might be said of their perfect subordination and great skill in conducting war.
This is what the white people said about the Native Americans when they were studying us. Again, we're reading from the book View of the American Indians, showing them to be from the 12 tribes of Israel. Again, a book that was written over almost 200 years ago in congruence with records that date far back as about the 1700s. Because again, the Native Americans had been prevalent here in North, Central, and South America. So they were studying us, and they were noticing that we were very masterful in the way that we conducted warfare, and there was a process to it. Let's read about that process. Read on.
Which would throw considerable light upon the character of this people.
So the white man seen the way they conduct warfare. That's a good way to understand these people. Go ahead.
But as this would lead us into wide a field.
That's all right. It's a very broad spectrum thing for them to cover. So let's let them zero in on one thing here. Go ahead.
And embrace much which is not directly subservient to the object in view.
So basically what it's saying, this is a bunch of fancy way to say if we talk about that, we could be here all day talking about it. Read on.
It shall be passed over in silence. One subject, however, must be touched upon.
So this is a very important thing that they want to bring out regarding warfare. Go ahead.
When they determine upon war or hunting, they have preparatory religious ceremonies for purification, similar to those of the Israelites. Evidently, regarding the danger of losing their lives in these encounters and necessity of preparing for such awful event, great, however, has been their secrecy.
Start from the top. Let's get that clear. Again, it's talking about the process that these Native Americans would go through when they're preparing for war. Okay? Read that again.
When they determine upon war or hunting, they have preparatory religious ceremonies for purification, similar to those of the Israelites.
So they're looking to purify themselves before they go to war. Go ahead.
Evidently, regarding the danger of losing their lives in these encounters and the necessity of preparing for such awful event.
Warfare can be drastic and dangerous and perilous. So again, they want to purify themselves because they're hoping to have a good outcome in what they're about to endeavor. Read on.
Great, however, has been their secrecy in keeping their religious rights.
So again, this is another thing that these people that were studying them noticed. They were trying to keep their practices hidden. Read on.
From the knowledge of the white people.
To read that again.
Great, however, has been their secrecy in keeping their religious rights from the knowledge of the white people.
They didn't want white people to know what they were up to. They didn't want them to know because it was like as if it was a secret weapon for them, as if it was the tactic that was going to bring them victory in any kind of endeavor, warfare that they were going to do. So it was like a secret, right? You wouldn't like if America went to war, right? And has the nuclear bomb and the F-22 stealth fighter, they're not gonna want the enemy to know the blueprint for the F-22 or for a nuclear bomb. They're gonna want to keep that hidden, right? Because it's pertaining to warfare and it gives them an advantage in warfare. And this is something that the Native Americans did not want white people to understand about how they conducted warfare, though they were very masterful at it. And though, of course, the white man being as nosy as he is, he's going to study them to the T to try to understand what it is that they're up to. But read on, because it gets even crazier. Go ahead.
And therefore, mistakes have been made in the description given of those rights. The following account of them seems to be admitted by the best evidence that has been obtained.
Okay, basically he's saying we know what we know. We don't know everything, but this is one thing that we can tell for sure from what we've studied from them, because they're being so secretive. They don't want white people to know what they're up to. What is it that they were able to determine, though? Read on.
In case of an inspection of going to war, he who has the command fasts several days.
Read that again.
In case of an inspection of going to war, he who has the command fasts several days.
Read that one more time.
In case of an inspection of going to war, he who has the command fasts several days.
Fast several days. He that has command fast several days. This is an Israelite custom. We just read about that in 2 Chronicles. Matter of fact, hold that. Let's go back to 2 Chronicles chapter 20. Get verse 5 one more time. This is, again, just showing you the proof, showing you where in history, in our records, that this is a custom that we kept as a tactical advantage in warfare. Read that one more time.
It's verse 3.
Verse 3?
Yeah.
Salaki, go ahead. Go ahead, verse 3.
The book of 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 3. And Jehoshaphat feared and set himself to seek the Lord and proclaimed a fast throughout all Judah.
Throughout all of Judah, they proclaimed a fast, all right? Now, of course, it was just, he actually proclaimed for the entire tribe to go ahead and fast as well. Now, we can go over the whole process. It goes through the story about what happened, but I want to get to the result of them fasting and preparing for that warfare. And that you could find, go ahead and jump down to verse 15. We're going to start at verse 15. Again, we're in 2 Chronicles chapter 20, and now we're at verse 15. Go ahead.
Verse 15. And he said, hearken ye all Judah, and ye inhabitants of Jerusalem, and thou King Jehoshaphat. Thus saith the Lord unto you, be not afraid nor dismayed by reason of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's.
So though the Jeroboam and the people of Israel were worried about the numbers, the sheer numbers of these heathens that, young man Jason, the ISBN, here, let me show him the book real quick. The ISBN is for this book right here that we're reading out of. It's called View of the American Indians, Their General Character, Customs, Language, Public Festivals, Religious Rites, and Traditions, showing them to be descendants of the 10 tribes of Israel by a man named Israel Worsley back in 1828. So the ISBN that I posted in the chat is for this exact book here. I believe I only paid like 12 or 13 bucks for it. So you can pick that up if you ever get the time to, if you ever get the resources to do so. I highly recommend it because this is a heavy hitting book right here. And it's very well in conjoined with View of the American Hebrews, which covers a lot of the same things. All right. Definitely UPK type of material here. It's always good to have a library of history, just like we read in the book of Job. It says, I pray thee that you inquire of the former age. You understand? I believe I did get it off of Amazon. Yes, I did. Heck yeah. Go ahead and look for that. And again, you want to have the King James Bible, 1611, the Apocrypha. But we're reading out of this book to really dial in on the Native Americans and their role in the way that they conducted warfare and some of their cultural practices. No sweat. I underbar. Some of the cultural practices that line them up with being the Israelites. Again, we're the Tuesday Brotherhood class. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you just how brotherly our people really are, how Native Americans really are. We were not savages like they try to say we were. We are not criminals like they try to say we are now. They try to say we're rapists. They try to say that we're thieves and crooks and no good, and all we do on the reservation is drink and get high and waste our life away. But the truth of the matter is we were a glorious people. And we had left Assyrian captivity in search of finding a place where we can keep God's laws, statutes, and commandments. And thank the Most High that we at least tried, because that attempt carried out and echoed throughout history. And we're reading about it in records that were written hundreds of years ago in books such as this. Books like Lost Tribes and Promised Lands. Books like the native, what's it called? The Aztecs by Diego Duran. We got books like that. You understand? There's books that are going to just further explain this, and that way you don't have to think that this is just our opinion. This ain't nothing new. This ain't new knowledge. This is ancient knowledge that's just coming to the forefront once again. What verse were we on? Other one?
Verse 15.
Verse 15. Go ahead. Start there. Read that again.
The book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 20, verse 15.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, hearken ye all of Judah, and ye inhabitants of Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
and thou King Jehoshaphat.
Yep.
Thus saith the Lord unto you, be not afraid, nor dismayed, by reason of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's.
But God, when God fights for you, you got a heck of a man in your corner, got your back right there. Let's see what happened when God is in our corner. Go ahead, verse 16.
Verse 16. Tomorrow go ye down against them. Behold, they come up by the cliff of Ziz,
Mm-hmm.
and ye shall find them at the end of the brook, before the wilderness of Jerel.
And what does he have to tell him about that? That's the battle zone. He's describing the place that a battle would take place. Read on.
Verse 17. Ye shall not need to fight in this battle. Set yourselves, stand ye still, and see the salvation of the Lord with you, O Judah and Jerusalem.
Come on, man. He says, what he just said is, go over here and enjoy the show. You're not going to have to fight this battle. Don't worry, God's got this battle on lock. See what he's got planned for this. Read on.
Fear not, nor be dismayed.
Right.
Tomorrow go out against him, for the Lord will be with you.
Read on.
Verse 18. And Jehoshaphat bowed his head, and with his face to the ground, and all Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem fell before the Lord, worshiping the Lord.
Worshiping the Lord. Exactly. And it says, worshiping the Lord. Oh, yeah, read on. Verse 19. Go ahead.
And the Levites of the children of the Kohathites, and the Levites of the children of the Kohathites, and of the children of the Korhites, stood up and praised the Lord, God of Israel, with a loud voice on high. Just
to recap for those just now joining in the chat, what's going on right here is that Israel was ordered to fast. So Judah was ordered to fast the moment that there was word that there was a nation, an army that was getting ready to come against them. A very large army, a very large multitude, specifically Moab and Ammon, which we know as the Chinese and the Japanese nowadays, but we won't get too far into that. We know that their numbers can grow quite substantially as they are now in the billions on this earth right now. Imagine how large their army was back then as well, coming against us. And a tactical order was given for Judah to fast. And what we're reading about here from 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verses 15 through 20 is the result of their decisions and how the Most High found favor of Israel in that specific scenario. All right. Now we're going to continue and read verse 20. And this is what happened on that day.
Verse 20.
Yes, sir.
The book of 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 20. And they rose early in the morning and went forth into the wilderness of Tekoa.
Just like he said to go to. Go ahead.
And as they went forth, Jehoshaphat stood and said, "Hear me, O Judah, and ye inhabitants of Jerusalem. Believe in the Lord your God, so shall ye be established. Believe his prophets, so shall ye prosper."
Go ahead.
And when he had consulted with the people, he appointed singers unto the Lord, and that should praise the beauty of holiness.
Okay. So he talking about having, I mean, they basically just enjoying themselves out there on the battlefield. Read on. Remember, because they don't have to fight this battle. The Most High is doing something here to allow them to find success in their warfare without them having even to lift a sword. Read on.
As they went out before the army, and to say, "Praise ye the Lord, for his mercy endureth forever."
Read on.
And when they began to sing and to praise, the Lord set ambushments against the children of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir.
Read on.
Salakias.
This is crazy, right?
We know who Mount Seir is. Right?
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
The Edomites.
And this is. Read on, man. Come on. Go ahead.
Which were come against Judah, and they were smitten.
They were what?
They were smitten.
Ambushments. What does ambush mean? Ambush. That's what ambushment means. It's like guerrilla warfare. And none of those people in those ambushes had to be Israelites. The Most High said, I'm going to just go ahead and just send some other random people against them, and y'all just sit back and chill. And we got people that are going to sing for y'all, and y'all going to be chilling while this warfare is going on, and you ain't even going to have to lift a finger, because that's what the Most High does when we follow and we show respect to him and purify ourselves before him and do things like fasting, which is considered a sacrifice, right? Think about the Day of Atonement. We have the Day of Atonement where we fast for 24 hours with no food or drink because we want to show the Most High our humbleness and our humility for him. We want to purify ourselves, and in doing so, we purify our spirits. We atone for our sins, and it also cleanses your body too. It resets your body as well, so you stand to benefit in multiple ways from it. And guess what? When we was reading in A View of the American Indians, the white man was trying his best to study what it was that we were doing that gave us such excellency in warfare, that made us prosper in warfare. And he was trying to understand it, but the Native Americans didn't want them to see what it was that they were doing. But what they were able to tell that we were doing and watching us and spying on us, they noticed that we didn't eat nothing. Just like how we didn't eat nothing in the book of 2 Chronicles. And now we're seeing what happened when we fasted and followed orders from our commander at the time. That's heavy, right? It's heavy. And the funny thing is Officer Kabar here was laughing because it was Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, which are the very same people that are the tip of the spear on the Confederacy against Israel that we read about in Psalm chapter 83. Coincidence? I don't think so. They don't forget. You know what I'm saying? But again, we're just going to read up to verse 25. Go ahead and finish that off. Go ahead and start at verse 23. Oh, no. Verse 22. Go ahead. Read verse 22 again.
The book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 20, verse 22.
Read.
And when they began to sing and to praise, the Lord set ambushments. Can I say
Go ahead, man.
And we know how inquisitive the Native Americans or the so-called Native Americans were in guerrilla warfare and setting and ambushing the American soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Almost every battle that took place, it was not a straight up war. It was always a guerrilla warfare. Always a guerrilla warfare.
And you know what was crazy too, and you're right for saying that, because again, this everything's written before time for our learning, right?
Right.
And they were ordered to go and stand. They did. It wasn't like they just had to stay home and chill. They were actually given the direction to go and watch what was happening, right? And seeing that these ambushes succeeded against an exceedingly great army that was coming against Israel, the ambushes actually won.
Right.
So yeah, they're gonna take notes on that and say, you know what, that's not a bad idea. Go ahead and write that down. Maybe one day, thousands of years from now, we might find that useful. Right? Is that what you were getting out with that? Because I get what you're talking about. Like, it was like they learned from that. They saw the success in that, and that became a part of our arsenal, even though we didn't have to spend any of our resources or any of our men to actually find victory in this particular battle. And it started with the fast.
Right.
That was the first thing. It was like, hey, people coming over to try to fight us. He said, all right, everybody fast. That was the first order. And then everything that came after that led to this situation, right? So read that. We were just in verse 22. Was that the end of that scripture?
Yeah. It said set ambushments against the children of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir. Which were come against Judah, and they were smitten.
They died. All of them ambushed. All that stuff is going crazy. It's just a big battle that's taking place, and Israel is not even having to take part in it. Go ahead. Verse 23.
For the children of Ammon and Moab stood up against the inhabitants of Mount Seir, utterly to slay and destroy them.
What? Says, for the children of Ammon and Moab stood against the inhabitants of Mount Seir, utterly to slay and destroy them. It's like they both were trying to come in to take out Israel. They ended up fighting each other. Go ahead.
That's exactly what we see it today.
Yeah. Yo, that's it. Hey, no, you ain't lying though, because that's I mean, the Chinese and Esau still, I mean, other than Russia, I guess, but they still plex. There's still a lot of tension there.
They still got tension there with Russia too.
Yeah,
like, it's playing itself out again. Basically.
Yeah, and that's crazy, because then that's important to know history, because it, not that it repeats itself, but there are things that do echo.
Right.
So it is good to take note of things that did happen back then, so you can catch wind of it and be ready for things like that. All right, go ahead, read on.
Right, verse 23. For the children of Ammon and Moab stood up against the inhabitants of Mount Seir,
go ahead,
utterly to slay and destroy them. And when they had made an end of the inhabitants of Seir, everyone helped to destroy another.
They all fought each other until they all died. That's what happened. And we didn't have to lift a finger. That's the power of our Lord. Read on.
Verse 24. And when Judah came toward the watchtower in the wilderness, they looked unto the multitude, and behold, they were dead bodies fallen to the earth, and none escaped.
So they all fought themselves until they all died, and Israel saw the whole thing. Like it was almost like they was putting on a show. The Most High was glorious in what he did in protecting our people. Read on.
It's like it says none escaped.
And none is, I like that part too. That part really hits home. It's like, oh, and by the way, they all died. Nobody escaped that.
Yeah, the Most High is a major tactician.
That's a tactical move, right?
Like there's nobody gonna out tactical him. You know,
it's like that. You know that saying, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend."
Right.
Well, in that case, we just let our other enemy take our other enemy out, and we didn't have to do nothing.
Right. The Lord is a man of war.
Yep. All right, read on. It gets even better. Go ahead.
Verse 25. And when Jehoshaphat and his people came to take away the spoil of them, they found among them in abundance both riches and both riches with the dead bodies.
Okay.
And they found money.
They went in and looted. That's what they say. They said the battlefield barren, everybody dead, but they got stuff on them. So they're like, hey, let's go see what they got now. Right? Read on.
And precious jewels, which they stripped off for themselves, more than they could carry away, and they were 3 days in gathering of the spoil.
Come on, man.
It was so much.
That's the end of that. That's what I wanted to get from there. You can go ahead and drop that, but I want you to understand that the result. Yeah, that's right. The result of them taking the time to fast for the Most High, to follow the orders that were given by the leaders of their people, it led to them going to not even having to lift a sword to go to war against their enemies. The Most High took care of the whole battle by making our enemies fight each other to the point where they completely annihilated one another. And then all Israel had to do was keep watch the whole time and see what happened. And then once it was all said and done, they went in and they got a whole bunch of loot, from jewelry to weapons and clothing and armor and all manner of things that are valuable. And you know what? Jacob, being a supplanter, being an opportunist like himself, hey, he's going to take advantage of that. I mean, how many times you go to the flea market and you see that there's a good deal on something? Well, guess what? It's because somebody took the time to find a good deal to get those things together to then get the chance to sell it to somebody else at a low price. And that's just kind of how we operate. We just try to make the best of our situation. In this situation, we benefited greatly because we sacrificed something like eating food. It seems like something that's so simple, and yet what we just read about here in this book, View of the American Indians, is that the white man was trying to study the way that the Native Americans were becoming masterful at warfare, and they were saying, what is it that they're doing? They're trying to be secretive about what they're doing that's making them so successful. But there was one thing that they were able to find out about their planning, and it was that they fasted. That was a huge part of their warfare, and it's proof that they were following Israelite customs. But if that doesn't convince you, then we're going to continue to show you more from a book such as this. Again, this is just one book, but it's got some really heavy points that I like to bring out from time to time because it's going to continue to really hit the nail on the head, saying that these Israelites, they follow the law. They were trying their best to keep God's law. They was fasting before they went to war. And there's other things that they did as well. So we're going to continue in that book, and we're going to go over to page, what was it? We'll read the end of what it just said at the end of page 37, where we were just reading. Sorry, page 38. It says, in case of an inspection of going to war, he who has the command fasts several days. All right. That's crazy, but that's what it is. And even reading on, just as a bonus, this is on the other side of the page. I got it highlighted right here on page 39. It says, similar accounts are given by Adair and others who state that besides the fasting observed on these occasions, they drink freely of a solution of bitter herbs, which they call purifying. Beloved psychic, the effect of which is strongly purgative and offensive to the taste, and so observant are they of these old established customs that they will not suffer anyone, although engaged in the war with them, to enter their camp or have intercourse of any kind with them until he had undergone the purifying rites. This also savors of Hebrew manners found in the book of Deuteronomy Chapter 23, where we read about Israel using bitter herbs during the time of the, I believe it's during the Passover, we eat bitter herbs. That's a part of our culture. And Native Americans were doing that as well. And again, they were trying their best to find out what the secret was to our success. So they was really digging. This is what they found out. What I actually wanted to get, though, was this part right here. Man, go ahead and start, because we talking about warfare, right? Right there where it says, while engaged in war. Go ahead.
While engaged in war, the Indians will not cohabit with their women.
They will not cohabit with their women during that time because they don't want to be unclean. Why would they do that? Because they don't want to be unclean. That's another Israelite custom. Go ahead.
Kill people.
Mm-hmm.
War.
Exactly. Go ahead.
They religiously abstain from every kind of intercourse.
Read on.
Even with their own wives.
Even with their own wives. Read on.
For the space of 3 days before they go to war, and also after they return home, because they are to sanctify themselves from all that has been wrong during the war.
So I'm about that 3 days, just like in Chronicles, we just read that after that war, after that battle occurred, it took them 3 days just to get all the loot that they had. That was all free loot. But at the same time, here we're reading that they actually abstained from becoming unclean in any sort of way before they went to war. They even gave it a space of 3 days just to make sure that they are in the right mindset, in the physical mindset to get ready for warfare. Okay. And that's the crazy thing about it, because we're continuing to see more and more proof that they followed Israelite customs. Why wasn't we taught this in schools? Because they didn't want us to know the truth about who we were. They won't want us to know about the truth, because we read in the scripture in Deuteronomy that when we actually know our culture and follow it, we are put above all nations that are on the face of the earth. You understand the importance there? Because now I got to go and read you a book from 200 years ago that shows you what happens when we keep God's laws. And even when we were Native Americans, not even just full on Israelites, but when we were Native Americans, we still followed some of these customs and found success in following these customs. Read on.
So Joshua commanded the Israelites the night before they marched to sanctify themselves by washing their clothes, avoiding all impurities, and abstaining from all matrimonial intercourse. And so Uriah, when called home by his licentious master,
Go ahead.
In order that he might by intercourse with Bathsheba hide the crime to which he had invited her, declined going into his house and partaking of the family delights while the ark of the Lord was in the camp and at war and the war unfinished. And
you see it basically he's relating it to the scriptures. The Native Americans, what they're doing relates to the scriptures, and he's giving an example of when the Israelite did that. And in time of war, they abstained from intercourse.
Yeah, it's like,
go ahead.
Because that's when King David called Uriah back from the war to have sex with Bathsheba.
Yeah,
and he was like, he said he told him he couldn't because the men were still out there fighting the war.
And that's the zeal of the Most High right there.
And he did not have sex with Bathsheba. He sat right there in front of King David's room, and King David came out in the morning. He was like, "What is you doing? I told you to go have sex with your wife."
He's like, but we still got soldiers out there, and I don't want anything to go wrong out there. And he just wanted to meet. But you know what that really is? That's brotherhood right there. That's brotherhood, man. And you gotta give a big up to him for that, because not everybody's strong enough to give in to overcome that type of offer, right, so to speak. But the thing is, he cared about the lives of his brothers so much that he just kept the custom just to make sure that his sacrifice, that the Most High seen that and blessed the warfare of the brothers that are out there as foot soldiers. The Native Americans, they had the Old Testament. Remember, we were brought out of Assyria 700 BC and came to the Americas, like we just read before in the book of 2nd Esdras, which happened around 700 BC. So at that time, we still had, of course, we had been out of Egypt at that time, had the law, statutes, and commandments. The only thing that we didn't have at the time that we came over here is the knowledge that Christ actually walked the earth, because we were over here until the latter times. So we had not experienced Christ, because he came 700 years after that, when we had already been established on this side of the globe. The only thing that the Native Americans had pertaining to Christ was prophecies that pertained to him, but they did not actually undergo what Christ did. But they still showed brotherhood, and they still showed signs of echoing those virtues that Christ spoke about when he did walk the earth. And we had that in our culture. And that was a glorious thing to the side of the Most High for us to carry on those customs in our attempt to stay as a nation. Did we succeed? In the end, we didn't, because how do we know? We ended up getting conquered by our enemies once again. But there was a time where our people would stay with the laws, statutes, and commandments, and those signs and examples of us keeping it is something to remember. And it's important that we have that in record, because it shows that we didn't actually go completely off the rails when we came over here. We were not savages. We kept the Most High's customs as best that we could, given that we had been influenced by Assyrian captivities and other captivities from before that. We still had part of our culture and seek to keep our heritage. There's more to it, though. Read on.
And when the Indians return home victorious, they sing the triumphant song of, it says, yo.
Read it.
Oh, yeah.
Read that again. When the Native Americans returned home victorious, they sang the song. And what were the lyrics of that song?
Yo Hewa.
Yo Hewa, right?
Yeah, like Yahweh is just it's a very ancient way of saying it.
But yeah, again, right. Assyrian captivity probably messed with our Hebrew a little bit. Yo Hewa is a Native American thing, and Yahweh is the original tetragrammaton that was used. I believe it may even mention that. Go read on.
Right. Ascribing the victory as the Israelites did. Not not to their swords or arrows or to themselves, but to the great being.
So the great being is what we refer to the Most High as. We didn't glorify in ourselves when we won warfare. We gave glory to the Most High, and we sang praises to him for giving us victory in warfare as Native Americans.
Right. That's like
go ahead.
That's like Abraham, and Isaac and Jacob calling him God Almighty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you feel me? That's God Almighty. That's it. That's a great being. Hey.
But see where you're in there. I know there's more. There's more to it. Oh yeah. All this is good. As a matter of fact, start again from, because like I said, we got people jumping in the chat, and I know it's hard to jump into a class in the middle of it and not be able to grasp everything that's going on. But this is a class that you want to bookmark and save and keep in your records, because it's so heavy, man. And we showing you specifically in records that are written hundreds of years ago, very specific examples of Native Americans keeping very specific customs of the ancient Israelites that dwelt in the land of Israel thousands of years ago. You understand? And here we are reading about the Native Americans keeping the same customs on another side of the globe. Is that a coincidence? No. But those that have been studying and keeping track of the precepts that we've gone through from the beginning of class today are easily going to see that those precepts that are talked about in Deuteronomy about us being scattered across the whole earth, that came true. And then in 2nd Esdras, where we came from this side of the globe, so from that side of the globe all the way over here, that also came true. And that we also attempted to keep the Most High's laws. And so we're showing you the proofs. We're showing you examples of very specific things that we did that gave us favor in the sight of the Most High, pertaining to warfare, like we just read. Read that again.
Where you want me to start it?
You start at the Yahweh part.
And when the Indians return home victorious, they sing the triumphant song, Yahweh.
You could just say it how it's supposed to be. You might as well. It sounds Native American. You say Yahweh, why Yahweh? It sounds Native American. Yeah, they kept some of that Hebrew, and you can hear it echoed in their tongue and the way that they spake. That's us. We are one nation. So let there be no confusion in that. This is not people try to say this is a black Hebrew Israelite movement. This is for blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. Is it the? I think it might be the. Go ahead. Read on.
And when the Indians return home victorious, they sing the triumphant song of Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
ascribing the victory as the Israelites did,
Man,
not to their swords or arrows or to themselves, but to the great being.
that's beautiful right there, man. And it says, and I don't have to break that down. It's just straight up. This is what they wrote. They wrote this in the 1800s. This is exactly what the Native Americans were doing. Go ahead.
It's you can tell how separate it is from every other culture on the planet.
Exactly.
Every other culture on the planet, when they win wars, they give tributes to either the great sword, the great bow,
right?
Julius Caesar,
right?
Or Hannibal. You know what I mean? They give the
glory, the credence.
They give the glory of it to the people.
No, you're right.
Or to the people, or to the idols, and we give it to our power, to the Lord.
Man, that's a heavy point to make. You're absolutely right. You look at all throughout the Roman history, the way that they glorify their kings, their leaders, the people that fought in their gladiator stadiums, and all that manner of thing. They always glorify it. They do that even today in what they know in like your typical sports, on the sports scene, where you have Heisman winners and MVPs and Super Bowls and things like that. You know, it's just an echo of the same thing. Even in their military, they're always looking to exalt those that became distinguished in warfare as individuals instead of their entire nation or their power. Go ahead.
So like even now they SEAL Team 6.
Oh yeah. All that.
SEAL Team 6. They make movies to it 13 Hours in Benghazi.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They make movies to it.
Zero Dark 30.
Yeah, when they was doing when they in World War I or World War I and World War II, they was giving General Patton all the praise. Right? You feel me? So that's how they do, man. They give it up for they
glorified in their movies. No, Black Hawk Down. That's another one. They instead of the one. Oh, one of the best ones, Hurt Locker. Can't forget about Hurt Locker. Oh man.
But even when they but then when the Black, Hispanic, and Native American, like even when they win wars, they don't give the credit to the Most High, right? But then the first thing Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans do, no matter if they're rapping about trapping,
right,
rapping about shaking their behind, no matter what they're rapping about, the first thing they do, I give honor and glory to God, right? Even in their wickedness, they still try.
And what scripture is that? That precept. For they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge, right?
Yeah, I know the precept. I just don't know what the precept.
That's exactly the case, man. And we reading about that here in the book. Like I said, the view of the Native American Indians. For those that maybe if I could, I'd probably just read. Nah, it really shows it. Yeah, boom, right there. That's the book we're reading from. That's the ISBN for the book that we're reading from right now. And we'll tell them what page you're on right now.
We're on page 43.
And we're just getting to the good stuff. I'm not even done yet, man. I'm not even getting to the height of the
So what's
117. All right, go ahead. Read on. Let's get that paragraph in. There's a whole paragraph there, and then a statement after that we really need to get. Go ahead and read on.
This paragraph right here after it says the great being.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says, when about to make peace, an embassy approaches the town, and a messenger is sent ahead to inform the enemy of their pacific intentions.
Go ahead.
He carries in his hand a swan's wing painted with streaks of white clay.
Okay.
The emblem of a peaceful embassy. The next day they enter the beloved square. When their chief taking the lead is met by one of the old beloved men or beloved men of the place, they approach in bowing posture. The one asks, "Are you come as a friend in the name of the Great Spirit?" To which the other replies, "The Great Spirit is with me. I am come a friend in his name."
Very spiritual people. The Native Americans are very spiritual, and we're talking about what they do in times of peace, We read about what they do in times of war, the sacrifices they made, and the preparations that took place that would lead to their success. Now, this is, of course, the end result. After everything's said and done, even in the peace part of things, they still act very respectable, and this is how they operate. And that's what we're reading. Go ahead.
The beloved man then grasped the stranger with both his hands around the wrist of his right hand, which holds some green branches, and then again about the elbow, then about the arm close to the shoulder as a near approach to the heart.
That's like, it's kind of similar to the way brothers dab each other up when we greet each other. It's pretty much exactly like that. It's just a way of showing brotherhood, basically, right? Yeah, something like that. It's a little bit different, but you can see how it's evolved over time because we can't really, with Corona and everything, we just use the elbow, right? So, but back then, of course, when Corona, because, you didn't have all these dang heathens running around, right? So that's how they operated. Go ahead.
He then waves an eagle's tail over the stranger's head and pledge of good faith. This ceremony was observed between General Washington and an embassy from the Creek Nation in the year 1789.
So you said General Washington saw this firsthand.
Right.
They didn't put that in the history book.
No, they didn't.
They did not, but they should have. Go ahead.
The common method of greeting each other is similar to the above. The host asks, "Are you a friend?" The guest replies, "I am come in the name of Yahweh." Man,
they stated the Tetragrammaton when they came to greet themselves. Go ahead. Native Americans.
It literally says Yahweh.
Yahweh.
It literally says that. It doesn't say it like in Hebrew. It says it like in English, but it Yahweh.
That's it right there.
It literally says it.
We don't even need to keep proving, but we do it anyways because, again, it really drives the point home because you see this book come to life in your ancestors. We seeking our forefathers right here, and we understanding where we at, and that we are in our Sareth right now here in America. You understand? And we are here till the latter time, and that we had been attempting to keep God's laws, but we fell away from that. And what we're doing here, and we're talking about in the I.S.U.P.K, we're awakening the real Israelites. That's the end goal here. That's what we want. Because the result is we get back to following those orders, sacrificing by fasting. Guess what? We don't have to lift a finger to go to war against anybody. We got a power that'll handle business without us having to do anything. Of course, if we are given the order to do anything, then we will. But the thing is, if we are to be the righteous people of the Lord again and to be above all nations, we got to come together as one. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. This is not just a black movement. This is why we're driving that point home, because here we are in San Antonio, Texas, where it's predominantly Hispanic and Native Americans here. We breaking ground in Acuña, Mexico. Big up to the brothers out there in Acuña, Mexico, tuning in, learning the truth about their heritage, learning the facts that had been hidden from us for so long. And we unearthing these things and finding out exactly how our people operate and how we had been in history hundreds of years ago. And we were people that were respectable. We were not savages, and they lied about what we were. Read on. Where was we at in that?
It says these people are said to be extremely kind and affectionate.
Oh yeah, read that. That's the part I wanted to get. Read that right there.
These people are said to be extremely kind and affectionate to one another, always sharing among them whatever is given, and hospitable to strangers. Hospitable to strangers who visit them, giving them always the first piece of their victuals.
So it's saying that these people are very kind and brotherly towards one another. This is the mindset of people that are holy and righteous, like the Israelites. This is what the Native Americans really were. Not what our book of lies in the K through 12 school system tries to teach us. Even in other countries such as Mexico or South America, they don't get the full understanding of what we were. We have to go and dig out books like this one right here. We got to find books to show you that history says otherwise. There are other perspectives out there that you could seek and find the truth about what we really are. Okay? Drop that. We've been, big up to them for Israel Worsley making that book in 1800, talking about the Native Americans saying Yahweh, the Native Americans fasting before war, the Native Americans being brotherly and kind to one another. It's good to know that that's how we were, because when we show signs of that today, that's evidence that we can still be the nation of Israel and be those righteous people that deserve that seat on the throne above all nations on this earth. But we have a lot of work to do to build ourselves back up to that, don't we? And the only thing that's keeping us from it is these 12 tribes coming together. And instead of actually doing that, our people like to stay dormant and content with their life as it is, in the ignorance that we find ourselves in today, the distractions that we find ourselves in today. Well, we're going to break away from that.
Right, bro.
And we got to get further evidence that these people here are people that deserve to be taken care of, deserve to be stood up for. These are our brothers we're talking about. The Native Americans had been destroyed by our oppressors. The Hispanics had been destroyed by our oppressors. And it is up to us to make sure that we stand up for them and show them a better way and be that example for them, to show them that they can have hope, to show them that they can have faith again. Because the truth is out there now, and the I.S.U.P.K is the home of the truth. Let's get 1 John chapter 4 and verse 20.
1 John chapter 4 verse 20.
1 John chapter 4 verse 20.
The book of 1 John chapter 4 verse 20. If a man say, I love God, and hated his brother, he is a liar.
Are these fake Israelites out there saying that only black people are Israelites? What are they? They're liars, because they say they love God. But here we're showing you the proof that the Native Americans are the Israelites, word by word, what people have said. So many specific examples that makes it a solidified fact, and you're going to dislike your brother? Why? Because of the color of his skin? It goes deeper than that. It goes deeper than that, because the understanding of a real Israelite is that this is a bloodline lineage we're talking about. This is a spiritual warfare that we find ourselves in today, and they look for any which way to divide us from one another. Well, to heck with that. We're done with that. We're destroying that in the school, to the point where this whole entire world is getting ready to change because of what we do in this school. And you are a part of that as well. You have the chance to be a part of that change, and that this whole world can turn into a better place when we are the ones that are leading it righteously. Read that again.
The book of 1 John chapter 4 verse 20. If a man say, I love God, and hated his brother, he is a liar.
He is a liar if he says that. Read on.
For he that loveth not his brother whom he have seen, how can he love God whom he have not seen?
Guess what? We just read in the book of the View of the American Indians, these Native Americans loved one another. These Native Americans saw each other. Even when they were from different tribes, the way they would greet each other showed that they had respect for one another, showed that they both feared the Most High. They operated like this. And we can operate like that again. We can operate like that again and become a powerful people once again on this earth. But it's not without its sacrifices. Just like how Jehoshaphat had Israel sacrifice before going to war. Be not ignorant of this one thing. Coming to the truth, changing your life is warfare. So be ready for some sacrifices in the ways that you used to live. Be honorable and glorious in the sight of the Lord, and make sure that you're changing yourself to be that better person. You understand? From being a purified soul. Taking care of yourself, cleansing yourself, you know what I'm saying? Just going by the examples that we're reading about right here, to the foods that we eat, to the not smoking anymore, not dealing drugs to one another, handling business, staying healthy, you know what I'm saying, to prepare for things that are to come. This is why these records were written for us, because it was written for our learning. And it also gives us hope when we hold on to this truth and continue to solidify our faith with evidence like what we're reading about here. Now, in doing so, it is best to keep up with the times. And guess what? These times are no different. This same thing that the Native Americans have been dealing with for hundreds of years, the Hispanics have been dealing with for hundreds of years, it's still going on. That warfare has not diminished. We are still at war every single day. And let's get some more examples of this. But before we do, we need a little bit more understanding on these Native Americans, because these are our brothers. This is us that we're talking about right here. So we're going back to the book, View of the American Indians. We're going to start at page 43 on the bottom, where it says they are not only religiously, do you see where that is?
Yeah, I'm looking at
Go ahead. Right, start right there, other one.
It says they are not religiously attached to their tribe while living, but the bodies of the dead.
So yeah, they're even religious. That we're even careful about people that have passed away. Go ahead.
Especially their bones are the objects of their solicitous care. So
we take care of those that are alive because they're our brothers. But we also make sure to honor those that have gone by making sure that they are that they're processed in a due manner. Go ahead.
The funeral rites which they observe show that they have some notion of a future state of existence.
Oh, read that again.
The funeral rites which they observe show that they have some notion of a future state of existence.
A future state of existence. Read on. Read on.
Oh, so like, and even the body rise. Even I'm sorry, and even of the rising of the body.
Ooh. Read that again.
And even of the rising of the body.
The Native Americans believed in what after death?
And even of the rising of the body.
Man, come on, man. This is Israel we're talking about. They're talking about reincarnation. A rising again.
I just did a class.
Man, come on, man. And we're talking about Native Americans, bro. This is what I'm talking about. This is yeah. I hope y'all wrote down that ISBN, because this is a one heavy hitting book right here, man. It's bad, right? Go ahead, keep going. There's more to it.
They make a large round hole in which the body can be placed upright or upon its haunches.
Go ahead.
And placing the body in it with the face towards the east.
Come on, man.
Cover it over with what will support the earth above it.
Mm-hmm. So when they bury the body, they bury it in a way where the body's even facing the east. That's what the Native Americans did. I wonder why. And they knew how to tell which direction was east. They knew where the sun came from. They were not ignorant people. And we knew the importance of facing the east because we also prayed to the east. Read on.
And raised over it a little tumulus.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
The corpses. The corpse is dressed in its best apparel, and near it are laid what was thought valuable and esteemed by the dead. If a warrior, his bows, arrows, hatchet, or the like. So free are these people from the spirit of covetousness.
So it's not.
Thou shalt not covet.
They're free from the having worldly possessions, to the point where they'll even burn the possessions of the person that passed away. It wasn't very important for them to be buried with all their stuff like the way the Egyptians like to be. Sometimes they would. There were certain things that maybe they found valuable that they kept with their body, but for the most part, they were not covetous. They were not like you think of nowadays when somebody has a funeral, all the stuff that they have left, the whole family's fighting over it. We have gotten so far away from what we were before. But thank the Most High, we're reading an example of how we actually were. And that we were righteous and glorious people. And this is our enemy telling us this. This is what they studied. This is what they found out about us just from spying on us. But we have it inside of us all along to be this way, but it is suppressed because of our ignorance. and because we do not have that understanding of who we are on this earth. You understand what I'm talking about? And that's the crazy thing about it. Go ahead, read that. Read. What was the rest of that?
Press it in case of death. They burn all the little property of an Indian at the time of death, or bury it with him in his grave.
Let me see real quick.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Keep going. Now at this point, we're just reading through the book. I want you to get some more info from this, because this is going over the process that takes place when the Native Americans bury somebody, and the grievance process. Go ahead.
It says, so free are these people from the spirit of covetousness, that to repress it in case of death, they burn all the little property an Indian has at the time of his death, or bury it with him in his grave.
Okay.
Among the Indians of Canada, when a person expires, the house is filled with mournful cries.
Okay.
Friends are invited to lament with them.
Fair enough. That's the process. When someone passes away, show your support. They're showing brotherhood and doing that. They're not just going to ignore the fact that their friend is going through something. They're going to feel that pain with them. They're going to feel that loss with that family that lost somebody. This is how the Native Americans roll. And guess what? This is how we act even today. We do the same thing. Read on.
And these manifestations of grief are kept up as long as the expense can be borne.
Right.
In some nations, the relatives fast to end of the funeral with tears and cries. And in others, there are women whose business it is to undertake the office of weeping and wailing.
We even had women that we would set women to go over to your house to cry with you, to cry for you. When your tears when you didn't even have any tears left, we'll send somebody that'll help, that'll cry in respect to the one that you lost. But this is scriptural. This is biblical. Read on.
And who go from house to house to relieve the family of the painful task. They sing, dance, and shed tears, always keeping time to their vocal strains. See Jeremiah 9:17.
And what does it say in there? It's just like the excerpt.
Okay,
go ahead.
Consider ye and call for the mourning women, and send for cunning women that they may come. For a voice of wailing is heard. Some of these women have acquired the art of shedding tears at will, and they are much esteemed on the melancholy,
right?
Oh, melancholy occasions.
It's a sad occasion. But basically what it's saying right here is the Native Americans had a custom where they would even have people go help you grieve. And in the scriptures, it says the same thing. It says that in the scriptures, there were women that were able to that had a duty to do that, just as a way of respect, so that you didn't feel alone in your pain. You understand? Like that's the level of brotherhood that we've established as a nation, that ties with the biblical theme of the Israelites, and how it's been echoed throughout history. And because, again, we already know that the Native Americans are Israel. We've shown you enough proof. But to show you such specific things like this is so important, especially for what we're about to read in here in a couple minutes. Go ahead.
Those who have sought a resemblance between these Americans and the Hebrews have not failed to notice between these Americans and the Hebrews. Have not failed to notice in many different parts of these cases of resemblance which support their opinion, finding them much resembling theirs.
Basically, he's saying these are like Israelites right here. These are Israelites. Skip down to page 45, where it says the graves of the dead. That paragraph, just that paragraph right there.
The graves of the dead are so sacred among them that to profane them is the greatest act of hostility that can be committed against a nation.
Read that again.
The graves of the dead are so sacred among them that to profane them is the greatest act of hostility that can be committed against the nation.
Now, hold on a minute, because the Native Americans said that like disrespecting their grave is the most horrific, blasphemous thing that you could do. Now, mind you, they're men of war. They're valiant people. When it comes to warfare, they take a loss. They take a loss. Thing is, the Native Americans were overcome by militaries from other nations, right? And to the point where they were also put into graves. And this is what we see in history. And even today, this is something that is still very important, that we remember just how important it is to protect even the grave sites of those that have that have lost from the Native American tribes. These again are our brothers that are in mourning and continue to be in mourning over all of the oppression that they face every single day in this place. Read on.
It says, and they will not suffer a white man. And they will not suffer a white man to be buried in the same ground with their own people, deeming it criminal, and believing that the spirits of the dead will haunt their houses and bring misfortunes on their families.
They didn't even want white people being buried with them. Let's get that article that I sent you real quick. You got that article?
Yeah, I got the article.
All right.
I'm sorry. I'm getting highlighted.
Go ahead.
I dig that. That's right there.
Yo, they wanted to hide their warfare tactics from white folks. They didn't want to be buried with white folks. Come on, man. Like, they what is it that they had against them? They knew that these people were people that did not have honor in mind. At all. And let's get an example of that, because that's still happening to this very day. Matter of fact, San Antonio, you have that happening right now. You got that article? It's your text message. You got it in a text message.
I'm trying to get it. Yep, it's happening right now.
All right, what's that? Go ahead and read that title real quick.
It says, burial ground under Alamo stirs a Texas feud.
Go ahead.
And this is out of the New York Times.
New York Times. What the date written on this? What's the date?
Hold on.
I think it was in November last year. That was just a month or two ago. What's it doing?
You know how it wants you to pay for it?
Oh, yeah. See if it lets you read it. Go ahead.
Oh, November 25th, 2021.
All right, read on.
It says, burial ground under the Alamo stirs a Texas feud. Native American.
Did it pop up again?
Yes.
Let me see. Hold on. I know what you're talking about because it's doing it to me too. I have it right here, though. Let me know if it pops up again, because I have it screenshotted. You know what I'm talking about? Again, this article that we're reading is about Native American burial ground that's being desecrated right now in San Antonio at the Alamo. Well, guess what? The I.S.U.P.K holds camp right in front of it. These Native Americans whose bodies had been buried along with their oppressors, which was also a criminal act. We just read about that. They didn't like that too. Again, this place, the Alamo, was a missionary at one point, where they would convert Native Americans to Christianity and Catholicism. And a lot of the converts were buried there. And even some of the people that were part of the Spanish missionary group and stuff, they were also buried there eventually as well. And some of the people that defended that, it used to be a fort, I believe, at one point, that they also got buried there too. And we just read how the Native Americans didn't even want to be buried with white folks, let alone their grave be desecrated. So that's strike one and strike two in one article.
I got it.
Read on.
It says, the burial ground under the Alamo stirs up a Texas feud. Native Americans built the Alamo. Native American.
Is it still blocked?
Yeah.
Is it blocking you, or can you read it?
No, it's blocking me.
Hold on, I got you. Hold up. I'm screenshotting it because I know they're going to try to block me from reading. This is an article they don't want you to even read Apparently.
I'm trying to tell you.
It's such a heavy hitter right here because this goes straight in on exactly what everything we just read about. They want to erase it from history.
Native Americans built the Alamo, and hundreds of converts were buried there. Descendants are now fuming because Texas has rejected efforts to.
Is it still doing it?
Yes, it is. Let me get the screenshot, bro.
This hasn't been bothering me. Go ahead and try to use my screen right here. See if it doesn't. So again, the Alamo is going to go in some reconstructions right now, and they done found a mass burial site under the parts where they were looking to do the construction. So that has halted production, and instead of them trying to work their way around it and avoid it, they want to go ahead and go through with the construction. Exactly. Yes, exactly. It's a burial ground for a Native American tribe. And we just read that the Native Americans believe that somebody defiling their grave is the most offensive thing that you could do to a Native American person. And that's exactly what they're doing. After everything that they've already done to the Native Americans, you still want to take the bones away from the people that have been gone? Like, this is what you want to do? Read on. It gets crazy. Read on.
It says Native Americans built the Alamo, and hundreds of converts were buried there. Descendants are now fuming because Texas has rejected efforts to protect the site.
Go ahead.
It says Raymond Hernandez was a boy when his grandfather would take him on walks to the Alamo, pointing at the grounds around the Spanish mission founded in the 18th century. Mm-hmm. He'd tell me again and again, they built all this on top of our camp, or top of our Campo Santo.
Campo Santo, what does that mean? Go ahead, read on.
Said Mr. Hernandez, 73, using the Spanish term for cemetery.
So this man, the 73-year-old man, says, my dad used to walk me down here and tell me that they built all of this over our cemetery. There's a disrespectful thing to have done.
Using the Spanish term for cemetery. An elder in San Antonio, Tapalam Kahalutakan Nashin.
Yeah, Kahalutakan. Yeah, that young man Jason in the chat just posted it. Yeah, it's a Kahalutakan burial ground. That's what that is. Yep, you're right. Exactly. Read on.
He added all of the tourists flocking to the Alamo are standing on the bones of our ancestors.
Read that again.
He added all of the tourists flocking to the Alamo are standing on the bones of our ancestors.
That's disrespect right there. Read on.
Right. On a busy day, thousands of visitors explore the Alamo and the site of pivotal 1836 battle in the Texas Revolution, where American settlers fought to secede from Mexico and forged a republic that will become part of the United States.
So, of course, Battle of the Alamo. Remember the Alamo. They always say, remember the Alamo. All right. Well, yeah, we remember it, but we also remember that it was a burial site for the Native American tribes that were there. Let's not forget that. Of course, they want to just sweep that to the side and do a whole bunch of reconstruction to make their site more attractive to visitors, to tourists. There's no middle ground with these people, man. Now you see exactly why they didn't even want to be buried with white folks, because there's no reasoning with them. All they do is just disrespect, take, steal, kill. None of that. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. They didn't even want to recognize them as Native Americans because they know that there's certain laws and stuff in place to protect them. So they just want to say that they're regular Mexicans. It is enraging. And guess what? We hold camp right in front of the Alamo here in San Antonio. We've been there multiple times on was it Fridays or Saturdays? On Saturdays. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the thing that you got to keep in mind, is that this battle that's going on, it's still warfare that's happening. And the I.S.U.P.K is right there on the front lines, standing up for those that don't have nobody to stand up for them, that have no hope. And we're here to tell them that they are the true children of Israel. We're here to show them their culture again and raise them up and give them their strength back. Give them their spirit back. Because the people of the Native American tribes and the Hispanic tribes are a glorious people, an honorable people, a people that shows love for one another, a people that shows respect and righteousness and purity in times of when they need to. And they want to lie about what we were. That's the warfare that we face these days. But we just read in 2 Chronicles that when our people take the sacrifices and the proper necessary steps in preparing for warfare, there is much to benefit from that. And we go to war every day that we can on the weekends, and we win every single time we go to war because we keep God's laws and we follow the customs of the ancient ones that have been given us an example from before time. You understand? Was that the end of that paragraph right there?
Yeah, that's the end of that paragraph. So.
All right, so we can go ahead and drop that. Again, we just read a couple of excerpts from that book, View of the Native American Indians, right? Showing what we did in times of war, showing what we did in times of peace, showing what we did when we had to bury folks. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just a part of it. I'm going to end it on this scripture right here. Go ahead and get John chapter 15, verse 13. Mm-hmm.
John chapter 15, verse 13.
Come on. Go ahead and get that.
I'm just asking.
It's hour 50.
John chapter what?
Oh, John chapter 15, verse 13.
The book of John chapter 15, verse 13.
Mm-hmm.
Says, greater love have no man than this.
What greater love had no man more than this? Read.
That a man laid down his life for his friends.
That a man laid down his life for his friends, his brothers, his kinfolk. We ought to lay down our life for these Native American tribes that are struggling right now at over there in the Alamo, that are struggling right now over on the borders to Mexico, from the Rio Grande Valley to those that are even outside the U.S. that are struggling to survive and make ends meet. We can reach those people even through classes like this, because there is a power that comes from returning to your culture that gives you all the ambition that you need to make your life better. And our people need better lives right now, because we in hell right now. We so much in hell that we can't even die and rest easy. They're over here reconstructing the bones on our graves and things like that. It's disgusting, the things that we deal with out here. But that just further shows who our enemy is, and our history that we're going to continue to bring out in these classes are going to show exactly who we really are and what we ought to do and how to operate. So we ought to lay down our lives for each other. You know why? Because Christ did that for us. And while Christ may have lived in the time frame where the Native Americans were living over here and did not get to experience his teaching, we are now in the time of awakening. Last scripture, and I swear it's the last scripture. Start Revelation chapter 5. Revelation chapter 5, verse 1. Go ahead and start at verse 1. We'll end it on this, because again, what happens is a lot of times people try to say that the Hispanics ain't Israelites. They try to say this is a black Israelite movement. They try to say all these things and try to separate us in this movement, but they don't know the scriptures. We know the scriptures. We're the authorized teachers of these precepts to show you the truth in the scriptures, to show you that this is a part of the process. Revelation chapter 5, verse 1. Read.
The book of Revelation chapter 5, verse 1.
Go ahead.
And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne of a book, written within and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals.
Go ahead.
And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof.
So the angels is seeing the book, the scriptures, the truth. And the angels asking, who's worthy to open up the book and to raise this truth up, because they see our people struggling here on this earth. They see the time frame that we went through our ignorance and having to deal with captivities over and over, and our attempts at trying to be righteous again, and our failures, and everything that comes with those failures, and all the curses that we've gone through, us having to be scattered all across the globe, us losing our heritage and becoming trapped in hell every single life that we have to live on this earth. They're asking, who is worthy to open up the book? Read on.
Verse 3. And no man in heaven, nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon.
So they were feeling some doubt. Read on.
Verse 4. And I wept much, because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon.
The truth had not been taught on the earth. They were looking for the truth to be raised up on the earth, but it was always prophesied that this was going to happen. Read verse 5.
Verse 5. And one of the elders said unto me, weep not. Behold, the Lion, the tribe of Judah, and the root of David hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof.
Now, the Israelite School of UPK has been around since 1969, where blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans have been taught the truth of the Bible. And our King Yahushua, the Lion of Judah, has raised from the root of David, had prevailed to open the book. Christ started the truth. Christ, being a black man from the tribe of Judah, started the true understanding of this book. So it is only right that the scepter belonged to Judah, because he is the one that brought forth this truth and carried that torch. And now in the I.S.U.P.K, the black man is the lead tribe in the I.S.U.P.K, and of course in the nation of Israel, because they are the one that has proceeded to open the book and teach the truth. So all the other tribes are to follow suit after the tribe of Judah, who is leading us to the truth. So no longer are we going to be divided anymore, showing that this is just a black Israelite movement. There was prophecy that it was going to start that way, but it is also prophecy that we are to join with them and to become as one again. Because when we do, we will be above all nations that are on the face of the earth. So with that, we are the I.S.U.P.K, started out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Command General Yohana in 1969, and we are here to teach the truth that blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians are the real Jews that the Bible was talking about. And with that, I pass the class over to Priest and Officer Kabar.
This is the I.S.U.P.K security announcements. We are the I.S.U.P.K. Started out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rule for new brother and sister. When a new brother and sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the world. If they need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There's another 6 months in which the brother or sister will court each other. Mm-hmm. After this 6 months period, the brother or sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment. Numbers, you can find this in Numbers 18 to 21st verse, and Malachi chapter 3 verses 8 through 10. Ma'ashra means tenth in the Hebrew. 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you, give to the Treasury Department or teacher. Priest fund, free will offering for priests, not mandatory, whatsoever the amount you would like. Upcoming holy convocations. The Feast of Purim is celebrated on the 14th day of the 15th, the 14th day and the 15th day of the 12th month. Monday 14th February and Tuesday 15th February of 2022. You can find this in Esther, the 9th chapter, verses 20 to 31. If anyone wants to be a trooper in the school, start wearing all black: boots, shirt, pants, headband, scarf. And these are the security announcements.
Most High Christ. Let's go ahead and everybody stand up. We're going to face the front of the class and we're going to say a quick prayer.
This is the Lord's Prayer in the Hebrew. Abanawa. Shabbat Shemayim. Kodash. Hayah. Shemka. Yahweh. Malakwathka.
Taba'ah.
Ratazaka.
Hayah.
Aisha.
Ba'arataza.
Kawa.
Kawa. Hayah.
Bashemayim.
Latanlano. Lacham. Kal. Yawam.
Wasalaklano.
Kabawathino.
Kasalaklano.
Kasalaklano.
Kabawathyanao.
Kabawathino.
Walala.
Wa'allah.
Tabayanawa.
Tabayanawa.
Banasayawan.
Banasayawan.
Abal.
Abal.
Hashayanawa.
Hawashayanawa.
Mayan.
Mayan.
Rai.
Rai.
Kaya.
Kaya.
Lakha.
Lakha.
Hamalakwa.
Amalakwa.
Walala.
Wahala.
Wata'apara.
Wathapara.
Liwalumium.
Liwalumium.
Amen.
Amen.
This is the Lord's Prayer in English. Our Father.
Our Father.
Which art in heaven.
Which art in heaven.
Hallowed be thy name.
Hallowed be thy name.
Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Thy kingdom come.
Thy kingdom come.
Thy will be done.
Thy will be done.
In earth.
In earth.
As it is in heaven.
As it is in heaven.
Give us this day.
Give us this day.
Our daily bread.
Our daily bread.
And forgive us our debts.
And forgive us our debts.
As we forgive our debtors.
As we forgive our debtors.
And lead us not.
And lead us not
into temptation.
Into temptation.
But deliver us from evil.
But deliver us from evil.
For thine is the kingdom.
For thine is the kingdom.
And the power.
And the power.
And the glory.
And the glory.
Forever.
Forever.
So be it.
So be it. All right. I'm going to turn face to brothers for one courtesy salute. Men of Israel. Ahmad Shabbat. Ahmadim. Barak. Yahweh Hashem Yahushua Barakatham. Yaji Matai. Turn face to sisters for one courtesy salute. Men of Israel. Ahmad Shabbat. Ahmadim. Barak. Yahweh Shemar Thumba Hashem Yahushua. Yaji Matai. Class dismissed.